All right. Sam with you back here on Friday, December 22nd. Another member request to take a look at STRAT. Now, this I've got a lot of members that are very bullish here, and some good news for them because it's trading very, very technically, and I think there's some interesting things to see here. So this is STRAT to Bitcoin on Bittrex. This is the 1 hour. So this kind of craziness here, there's no point in trying to put a count on that. There is no count. There's not always a count in the market at all times, although some would tell you otherwise. And I would tell you as a trader to be practical about it. If there's no count that's useful to you, there's no point in going through this trying to come up with some ridiculous complex correction just for the intellectual pursuit, unless that's your thing. I would tell you that this doesn't get meaningful until we hit this pivot here, where we can start a 5-wave sequence. And that's where I have started this from, and I think where we get some meaning and some tradable events here that can be useful to us. So looking at this, I can see a really nice clean. I get a 1-2. I get subdivision into my third, which I would expect. And you can see here we don't overlap the 1. That's kind of interesting. As I always tell you, that doesn't happen by accident. So we get a 3, 4 up into a 5. So if I look at that now, and on the assumption that, let me pull here. So if I look here, so here's my 1. We go down, we get just a little bit, a hair through it. We get through the 6, 5, but we know a 2 can go that deep. Well, then I'm going to pull up just to check it. I'm going to pull to my 3, and that's kind of interesting. So if I was pulling from my 2 for traditional, well, where do we go? Right into the box. Okay, so this, okay, it can't get, guys, it can't get any better than that. That is so okay, so we have our 1, we have our 2. We're pulling from the 2 to the 3, looking for the 4th. We have the Vegas wave. We literally go in between the Vegas wave into that. I can't script it any better than that. Not only do we go in between the Vegas wave, we go in between the 61865. That is a must-take trade. That you have to take that trade. You don't get those that perfect that often with very low risk, because we're going to put our stop. We can put our stop either under the 786 or just below the wave 1 high, on the assumption that we stay with an impulsive wave there. So from this, where do we go? Boom, right to the algo target. Okay, so you've got, and it pretty much of a straight line. I mean, yeah, we can get a 5 wave out of that, but that is. So algos are in. We know that. Okay, so that, again, algos are shown by the target, by the reaction at the target, not by the buy here. Although this is part of it, but here's the tell. It's the reaction at the negative 23.6. That's the tell on that. Well, of course, in addition to this, just to see what the geometry looks like, we're going to put a pitchfork on it. Let's pull from our low to our 3 high down to our 4. Now, I've got a modification on that. Well, even that by itself is interesting. But I can look at this and tell you that if I go back to original recipe. Okay, guys, I mean, it simply does not get any more technical than that. That is. So we have here, so let's look at all the components here that we have in this trade. Okay, so here's trading principle number 1. Andrew's trading principle number 1. By defining 3 major pivots, we have an 80% probability of making the median line. We literally tick the median line. We have median line trading principle number 2, that very often the market will pivot at the median line. So we have median line trading principle number 1 here, number 2 here. We come down right here. Here's the pause here at the lower parallel, back up for our B wave. Now we get the break down. So we can look at this and say, okay, well, I've got a wildly technical 5-wave structure. Given that, okay, so let's now that we know that this is a good pivot here. So then we get an A, we get a B, and then we come down for the C. Interestingly, the C's back here at the 50, but that's not our pull any longer, because we're now pulling from a completed 5-wave sequence. So we've got to go up to the top here where we wick the median line, back to where our entire 5-wave starts. You get it right on there. Okay, so we get an A, B, C into this to define our 2. So there's our A wave, there's our B wave, and we come down into a C, and we even get good subdivision into that. Okay, so this, while we could, if I highlight this, sorry, my machine is really slow today. If I highlight this, I can go out to the 2 and catch that. All right, so I can catch that. You know, I would probably reshape it. I would pull from these 3 pivots, but that still may be a contender because now we're playing for a 1-2. So now the count is, if I can get this. So here's the start of our 5 wave. There's our 1. Here's our 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, let me change the degree on that just so it makes sense. We'll go to a blue and we'll go up to minuet. Okay, so that now we've got a really nice technical count underway. So we know a 2 wave, highest probability for a 2 wave between the 50 and the 618. What do? We go right between. We get a little wick through the 233 here, but we've got support here. We hold the 618. So yeah, that's a deep 2, but that's what you're expecting in a 2. So now we're looking for an impulsive move because we have a completed 5 wave into a 1. We have a 3 wave counter trend correction of that 5 wave sequence into a 2. Now we're expecting our 3rd, which must be impulsive. Can't have a diagonal here. So we need an impulsive move out of this low. So how do we know? Well, the expectation would be that we're going to come up here and we're going to subdivide into 5 waves. So if we're just starting into our 1, so you know, no telling where we're going to pause there, but the structure here, the geometry might be a tell. We'd also be looking for some clue for resistance coming back the other direction. So if I'm pulling from this high to what now appears to be my 2 low, wouldn't be surprising that we'd pop up here and come. Get that back, get my arrow, and then run into some resistance here at the 618, as we do often from either direction. We also have the prior high here. So you might get some resistance here, which would set up, so potentially that becomes a 1. You might go down to the 15-minute to get better subdivision on that. And then the trade becomes the 2, trying to get into the 3rd of the 3rd. That's your money-making wave. So if the opportunity presents itself, if we can come up here, run into some resistance, get a reaction that we'd be anticipating, then you're looking for a 3-wave counter trend move here into a 2. Here's your exit. Here's your invalidation point. Well, for this trade, this would be the meaningful pivot because you're operating now on the assumption that your 2 low is in. So you don't want to try and rationalize it and say, well, if it goes lower, you know, maybe I'm getting an A, B, C, D. No, that's the wrong move. If you enter the trade on the assumption that your low is in, don't let the market go below it. Take your stop there and just reevaluate. You can always get back in. Always get back in. So if you look at that, just in terms of visually, you look at the risk reward. So if I like to do this a lot, just so you get a sense of it. So if this is my risk, okay, so you can look at this. I don't need to put the trading view piece on that. Just look at the risk reward. Okay, so do you see why that just visually just makes sense? I'm risking this to make that. So what do we got there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to 1. 5 to 1, and that's just your first algo target. Remember our expectation, if it's going to continue to, if this is the right pivot, and I would probably draw it the other way as well, but potentially, so here's our algo target from that low. So we've got that as target 1. I would also redraw this, and I might keep these on 2 different charts. I'd want to see this reaction. Okay, I'm like, what's going to happen if I'm coming up to this? Because now I've got 3 new. Well, these are the same, but I've got a new pivot here. So potentially, what I have here is my corner pocket, yet again. So where is that likely to bump into some resistance? Well, the median line's certainly a candidate. So maybe we end up, if we're going to get through these, if we're going to come back to the median line, which we know we have an 80% probability of doing if this pivot is going to hold, maybe our resistance, maybe our 1 comes into, I guess I can take this off now, you get the point. Maybe our resistance comes in now at the median line, and maybe we get a pivot there. Remember, median line trading principle number 2, the price will often pivot at the median line, just as we did here to the tick. So if we can get a push up here to the median line and a revisit, now the geometry is really just laying the map out for you. Wouldn't that be pretty? So into the 786 for the 1, down to the outside, lower parallel for the 2, and then again, we know our target here is back to the median line. Well, there's our algo target. The third might be much higher than that, because now we'd be looking at the length of the 1 projected from the 2. We'd be looking for, certainly we got to get to 100%, but we'd be looking for that 1618 as well. So if we draw that, so here's our 1 from my 2 low, potentially my 2 low. Well, here's 100%, and here's the algo target. So that would be a place for a partial profit. Where's the big target? Way up here. So if Strat's going to really fly here, if the correction is over and we're going to go into a big third, well, now look at that. That's what you're looking for. There's the 1/6. That's the highest probability, statistically speaking, for our third. So maybe you get a 1-2. So do you see that this would be the third of the third? Right? 1, 2, third of the third. Still knowing I've got 4 and 5 potentially, right? It's always just potential roadmap. So maybe we're coming back here to visit the median line again. So there's your, if you catch that, good for you. Congratulations. That's just what you're hoping for, right? Up to the upper parallel to get the 1618, 175 window. So if you can get that, yeah, take a long, hard look at that. I can promise you I'll be posting that to members as a place to enter, because look at the risk reward, right? Do you see that? I mean, that it doesn't. I mean, that if that sets up, that's one you really want to look long and hard at. That's gorgeous. So let's see if we can get this to follow that roadmap. That would be just gorgeous. Certainly one to have on your radar. Okay, guys, I'll wrap it there.